All right, let's jump in. Today we're talking about one of the wildest, most scandalous, and frankly, most important periods in English cultural history, the Restoration. This was a time when art, and especially theater, just exploded back onto the scene after being banned for years. It literally changed everything.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. Imagine if all public entertainment was just gone. Illegal. No plays, no big parties, nothing. And then, almost overnight, the ban is lifted. That's exactly what happened in England in 1660. And the result? A cultural shockwave that you can still feel today.
So, to really get a grip on why the Restoration was such an explosion of creativity, you've got to understand what came right before it. We're talking about England going from a time of extreme religious strictness to one of, well, unapologetic pleasure. It was a complete 180, and it set the stage for everything that followed.
I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. Under the Puritans, England was all about severe, strict morality. They saw theaters as dens of sin and shut them all down in 1642. But then, boom, the monarchy comes back and the entire cultural landscape just flips on its head. Theaters throw their doors open, and society embraces this social and sexual freedom that was a loud, very direct rebellion against all those years of repression.
And this quote from historian Roger Baker just nails it. This wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was an overnight cultural revolution. You know, the pendulum didn't just swing back to the middle. It flew all the way to the other side with some serious force.
So, who was the engine behind this massive shift? Well, it really all comes down to one guy, a king returning from a long, long exile. Everybody meet King Charles II. After his dad was executed, he spent years living it up in France, just soaking in the super lavish and artsy culture of the French court. So when he finally came back to England to take the throne, he brought all of that with him, a taste for sophisticated plays, witty banter, and just, having a good time. This was a king who loved theater, and he was going to make sure his kingdom loved it too. Okay, so here's the quick and dirty timeline to put it all in perspective. In 1649, the king is executed and England becomes a republic. That period without a king is called the interregnum, which literally just means between reigns. But by 1660, they're ready for a king again, and Charles II is invited back. That era, from 1660 to about 1688, that's what we call the Restoration. It wasn't super long, but man, was it a dynamic period. All right, so the king is back. The old rules are out the window, and the stage is set, literally, for one of the most exciting comebacks in history, the rebirth of English theater. Just let that number sink in. 18 years. An entire generation of people grew up having never seen a professional play. So when the theaters finally reopened, it wasn't just about reviving old stuff. It was a completely blank slate. It was a chance to invent a whole new kind of theater for a brand new world. And this new theater was radically different. The biggest, most groundbreaking change? Women. For the first time ever on the professional English stage, women were the actors. This was a huge deal. It wasn't just a gimmick. It created the first celebrity actresses, women who became total public fascinations. The theaters themselves got an upgrade, moving indoors and using fancy movable scenery and cool special effects. We also get the breeches role, where an actress would play a woman disguised as a man, which let her get in all sorts of adventures. And this was all personally greenlit by the king, who licensed only 2 official theater companies, creating this super competitive and innovative scene. So, you've got new technologies, new performers, and of course, the plays themselves changed completely. They got way wittier, a lot sexier, and yeah, far more scandalous. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? Restoration comedies were not there to teach you a nice, quiet moral lesson. Oh no, they were designed to mock social rules, to be daringly suggestive, and basically to shock anyone who was easily offended.
The signature genre of this whole era was something called the comedy of manners. So what is it? Well, put simply, it's comedy that puts the lives of the rich and fashionable under a microscope, and then ruthlessly makes fun of everything they do, their affairs, their social climbing, all of it.
So what were these plays actually about? Well, the main event was usually this witty war between the sexes. The plots were all about sexual conquests, clever tricks, and scandalous affairs. But the real star was the dialogue, just packed with razor-sharp banter and cynical one-liners. And the main target was always the hypocrisy and vanity of the upper class. This was definitely not family-friendly entertainment. It was sharp, adult theater for a very worldly audience.
But of course, comedy wasn't the only thing going on. The other big genre was heroic drama, and it was the total opposite. While comedies were cynical and set in London, heroic plays were deadly serious. We're talking epic stories of love versus honor, set in faraway lands with entire empires on the line, all written in formal, rhyming poetry. You could think of it as the big-budget blockbuster action movie of its time, a huge contrast to the biting social satire of the comedies.
Now, this revolution in writing, it wasn't just happening on the stage. This new sense of freedom lit a fire under all kinds of literature, with writers pushing the boundaries in pretty much every genre you can imagine.
You absolutely cannot talk about Restoration literature without talking about Aphra Behn. What a trailblazer. In a world completely dominated by men, she became a massively successful playwright and was one of the very first English women to actually make a living as a professional writer. And as if that wasn't cool enough, she also moonlighted as a spy for the king. Just an incredible figure.
I mean, centuries later, the great novelist Virginia Woolf paid her this powerful tribute. Woolf recognized that by smashing barriers and proving a woman could succeed on her own terms, Aphra Behn literally earned them the right to speak their minds. What a legacy.
Behn wasn't alone, of course. The era is sometimes called the Age of Dryden, named after John Dryden, the nation's poet laureate. This guy was a master of everything and really helped shape modern English writing. And then there's Samuel Pepys. He wasn't a playwright, but his super detailed personal diary gives us this amazing, unfiltered look into what life was actually like, from huge events like the Great Fire of London to his private thoughts on the play he saw last night.
So why are we still talking about this short period that ended over 300 years ago? What's the big deal? Why does it still matter today?
Well, the truth is, the legacy of the Restoration is kind of all around us. A lot of the things we just take for granted in our culture got their start right here. Using sharp satire to criticize politicians and society, the Restoration perfected it. The idea of women as professional artists, writers, and performers, Aphra Behn and the first actresses forged that path. Even the very beginnings of the modern novel and journalism were being laid down during this incredibly fertile period.
When you really think about it, this obsession with witty dialogue, social satire, celebrity culture, and public scandal, doesn't it start to sound, well, pretty familiar? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this the moment the modern world of entertainment as we know it was actually born?